Hello, it's a Great Southern Ancient Miniature Man, and this is a review of the Kimera Kolors base set acrylic paints. But before I get into that, I just wanted to show you and just talk a little bit about my general painting system and different paints that I've got and why I've sort of picked up the Kimera set recently. So just in the far side there to the left, some basic sort of cheap art store acrylics that I use mostly for basing. And then as you can see, I've got quite a range of different manufacturers' paints, and I really have no great allegiance to any particular company. I've just sort of bought small numbers of each. And the interesting thing that I've found is no one company seems to make consistently fantastic colours across their range. A lot of them are brilliant, and then you come across one or two that are pretty average and one or two that are really not very good at all. So I don't think you can necessarily say one company is consistently the best. Just to go through what I've got, there's a moderate number of Army Painter ones, some of the regulars and some of the speed paints, and then some nice metallics from scale 75, some really good metallics from Vallejo as well. We've got a few of the Citadel sort of contrast paints and regular paints, and then a fair few of the Master series paints by Reaper, which are very nice generally, and pretty good flow, quite smooth. I do like them. That was one box set I did get a while back. Another box set was these little Vallejo WizKid ones, which are actually really good sort of starting set, or even the small sets you can get very good value for money. They're very small though, only 8 mils, but a lot of the colours, that's actually quite enough to do lots of miniatures, and certainly good for colours that you don't use very often. Like this one I just use for lips, and basically I think that'll last me forever essentially. I got one Pro Acryl White, titanium white, after reading amazing reviews about it. It's pretty good. I don't think it's as amazing as people rave on about. And then what else we got? Oh, and then ones that I do like a lot of the quick washes by Army Painter. I've got some of the old ones and some of the new ones here. So anyway, basically that is just a preamble, and as I say, the main sort of take-home message is that none of them are consistently amazing. So time to try something else. So if you've been around the sort of miniature scene for a while, painting miniatures, you've probably heard people talking and whispering in the corner about these Kimera color paints. So made in Italy. The premise of them is that this set, which has got 13 paints and one mixing medium, is essentially the full set. Now they have brought out an expansion set, and they have brought out a number of sort of favourites of particular artist sets, so you can get more if you want, but the whole idea, which what appealed to me, is you basically get the box set and you've got everything you need. It's different though to all the other ones in that obviously you've got to mix a whole lot of stuff to get the colours you want. And on that note, it comes with this nice mixing chart to give you some idea how to produce most of the colours that you may want to do. So these are all the standard colours that come with it, and then obviously you darken it or lighten it by adding black and white, although there's also some good YouTube videos by one of the guys from the company, and he talked about colour theory and so on, and how often mixing with yellow or with a colour sort of further around on the colour wheel can be better, so rather than just going straight to black or white. The other thing they promote is that the colours are very pure, as in they're all single pigments. So this is all from their sort of spiel, and I'm not, I paid full price for this, so I'm not getting anything, any discounts. I've got no vested interest in it, but essentially they're all pure pigments, no black or no white in them, so you add your own to modify the tone of the colours. Here's all the colours. Well, the other thing to say is that they're much bigger than your average bottle. So they're 30 mils versus most of these guys about 18 mils. So I actually got this on special just after Christmas, and it was only 105 or 110 Australian dollars. So Actually very good value for money, and given the other thing is that they are very concentrated pigments, so in other words not as much mixing medium, so that means you need to, and certainly can, dilute them significantly and therefore get more value for money out of each bottle. So I would think these will be last me for ages actually. So we've got a white, we've got a yellow, we've got an orange, which for some reason they call yellow, what do they call it? Brown yellow or something? Warm yellow, that's right. That's the medium, which is satin. So if you want them to be less matte, because apparently they dry very matte, if you want them less matte, you can mix a bit of that in. Yellow ochre, which looks more like a sort of tan colour to me. Then we've got orange, which is, that's a proper orange, sort of a dark orange to me. The red, quite a well-known colour. A lot of people rave about that being the greatest red they've ever come across. We'll soon find out. What have we got? Magenta, red ochre, which is, it's a reddy, ochre-y kind of colour, as you'd expect. Violet, looks good. I haven't given them a good shake yet. I need a serious shaking before I do anything. The black, I think that's called. And that is, carbon black, I tell a lie. Again, got rave reviews about how amazing that black is, so we'll find out if it's as good as it's cracked up to be. And then phthalo blue with a red shade, and another one phthalo blue with a green shade, and phthalo green. Now I did look up what phthalo was a few weeks ago. It's some chemical composition that gives pigment to colours. I've just forgotten exactly what it was, but anyway, that's why they all have that name. Might have been simpler to name them slightly more clearly, but anyway, it's based on some sort of naming convention, I'm told. So there we go. So, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, although it obviously gives you the first impression, and certainly my first impression of these is very positive. They look beautiful, they're bigger than your average, they're pretty good value for money, and if they're really as concentrated and as sort of pure as they are said to be, then they'll be great. The thing with them is that you do really need to use a wet palette, because you often need to mix them up to get whatever colours you want, as we said, and that'll mean lots of waste if you don't have a wet palette that you can keep for a while. And also, the style of painting is going to be quite different to what I'm used to. So obviously I'm used to just squidging out a tiny bit of what I need and using it. But here I'm going to be mixing more, and it sort of lends itself to wet blending and those sort of techniques where you can make a whole gradation of different colours and shades to make more subtle lighting effects on your miniatures. So I reckon I'm a good painter, it's fair to say. I don't mean to be arrogant in any way. I think compared to many sort of competition painters, I've got a hell of a long way to go. So I've tried lots of different techniques. I'm always experimenting, as probably most of you are, looking for better methods. I've tried the sort of double slap chop method, chop on chop, but I didn't find that did much for me. I won't abandon it, but anyway, bottom line is I wanted to try a totally different sort of method of painting. So trying to paint the whole miniature, or at least a lot of it, in a single session with sort of wet blending and stuff. So that's my goal, and I'm going to try out these colours and let you know how I go. So I will see you soon with some more action on the Kimera Colour base set. Right, well, I've had a little go with these paints using my homemade wet palette, and I'm just doing some of these Libyan guys, Adir Makadeh, with the mohawks mostly, with the orange tunics and the brown skin. So the orange is, would you believe, predominantly that orange, and I've just mixed a little bit of black to make some slightly darker tones, and did a few kind of washes and so on. When I first put the first bit of orange out, it sort of squidged everywhere. I thought, oh, this is a problem, but I think it was I just hadn't perhaps shaken it up adequately, because I didn't have a problem with any of the other colours. A bit of red ochre I used, and the black, which is carbon black, to make the brown for the skin. That's one thing, it doesn't have any brown in the set as such, but pretty easy to make, and that way you can get a few different tones of browns, which you can see on these guys. So far I'm pretty happy with them. I think I'm going to block in all the main colours, and I'll give it a wash. I'm just debating whether to use my usual wash method or whether to make up a wash with these colours themselves. I'll think about that for a minute. I'm just going to use a little bit of the what is it, yellow oxide? Yeah, yellow oxide for the belts and stuff on these dudes. So I'll do that on camera. I'm not going to make you watch everything that I'm painting because that'll be long-winded and pretty dull. But let's give it a shot with just the fine details on the belts and stuff for these guys, at least a few of them. So now I've got a tiny bit of water there from earlier. They are quite concentrated, as they say on the packet, as it were, and whoops, you can't see that, can you? Trick is going to be for me to see it and the camera to see it at the same time. This might work. Okay, yeah, they are very concentrated as advertised, so they do need quite a bit of diluting. I've just used water so far. I will try a bit of acrylic medium later on and see if that does a better job. You see that? I think you can. So I'm not going to be doing the most delicate job here. I just want to get a bit of colour down, and then I'll give it a good wash over the whole thing, and then go back for a bit of highlighting. And I think that is decent enough for that. Okay, next guy. Give him a go. So these are a mixture of Agema and Vectrix, and even a few bits from other kits like some of the Perry miniature heads I've used amongst these, and that left arm's a Perry arm. I noticed from the Sudanese set. Put these guys together a few months ago, so I kind of forgotten some of the details. The sword over his right arm is also out of that Perry Sudanese set. Might do the arm strap in the same colour, I reckon. Anyhow, you get the idea. It's flowing quite nicely, needing a bit of dilution, and I'll come back and show you a bit more once I've completed, or at least done the wash on these guys. I'll just show you where I've got up to now with these guys. So I've basically pretty much blocked in all their main colours, and then I have given them a wash, which I used similar to what I would normally do. What I normally do is I use about a 50% Army Painted dark tone mixed with an acrylic mixing medium and just slap it over the whole thing. But this time I used the acrylic mixing medium and a bit of the brown mix really that I'd made already with these guys, and slapped that all over them, left it overnight. So you can see they're actually a little bit glossy now, which is interesting because they're normally very matte, these paints, so I'm not quite sure what to make of that. I'm going to go do some more highlighting of them now and see how they turn out. But thus far, they're nice consistency, a nice sort of creamy ones when you put them on the palette, and mixing them does seem pretty easy. I think I've got too much water on my wet palette. That's, as I say, that's not something I'm used to using, so I'm getting the hang of that as well. So I'm going to just try a slightly drier wet palette and see if that assists me a little bit, and I'll try a bit of dry brushing, so the hair on these guys with these paints, and see how that comes up. Back again about 2 minutes later. So I have done a very quick dry brush on these guys with just a very fine amount of white, and it has given quite a nice subtle highlighting. I probably see it better on these Libyan fellas. I find dry brushing white onto figures all over often give them a bit of a chalky sort of smeared appearance, but it didn't in this case. It's given quite a nice fine highlighting just on the raised areas, which is obviously exactly what you're aiming for. So I'm pretty impressed actually with that stage. I'm just thinking whether I leave it like that or whether I go over that with an ink or I guess a watered down very dilute orange for the tunics and maybe a really light brown on the skin. Not sure, I think it looks pretty good as it is. Just leave them like that, I think. This guy looks good. It's got maybe a tiny bit too much white on his nose. Just get a bit of that off still while it's damp. But there, the clothing looks excellent, I reckon. So I'll just do some more highlighting, put their shields and spears on, and then give you a final look with some final thoughts. Right, well, I finished 5 guys using predominantly the Kimera Kolors, and they're great, basically, is my summary. So I'll just give you a little look at a few of these guys and I'll talk you through some of my impressions. So the colours seem quite consistent, like the paint's quite a nice creamy consistency. I did find you got to shake them up a lot. They've probably been sitting there for a long time in the store, not being mixed at all. So it took me a while shaking them all to get them to run smoothly. But once I did, they were quite consistent and do take a fair bit of diluting. I did dilute them with water, which on the wet palette kind of made them thin out a bit too much. So I just tried the satin medium, which worked a lot better. And I've got a base, like a standard matte medium, acrylic medium, which I will use as well. So that's worked nicely. I did try a wash to make a wash with them. So, normally I mix, I think I mentioned before, the Army Painted Strong Tone with some acrylic medium 50-50 and douse it over the whole figure. I did the same using a bit of brown that I'd already made up, and it worked okay. It did leave a bit of sort of tide marks, and then again later I tried a few specific washes with similar problems that they just left a bit of a tide mark. They looked great initially when they went on. I thought this is going to be perfect. This paint can do everything, but ultimately I conclude it wasn't quite as good as, say, your standard Army Painter quick washes or shades or whatever they call them, just because of those tide marks. Dry brushing was brilliant. I only dry brushed with some white so far, but that went on really nicely and didn't have the same sort of chalkiness that I've always found with dry brushing white in the past. The mixing them on the wet palette has been fun. There was that the mixing chart I showed you. There was also another chart which I didn't show you before, but it does show you how to make skin tones of various darknesses and all these other nice shades of green and so on. So it's very user friendly the way they provide that sort of information. And I said there are other colours available in other expansion sets. So there are the main obvious ones that are lacking from this set is there's no Caucasian skin tone, there's no brown, although brown's pretty easy to mix up, and there's no metallics. So I have used normal metallics, mostly Vallejo on these guys for the silver and the bronze and so on. So they do have a set that's kind of specifically designed for non-metallic metal painting, which I've never got into. I can't see the point when you can get all these fantastic metal paints on the market. Why would you try to go to all the extra effort of doing non-metallic metals? Anyway, if you're into that, there is a set designed specifically for that as well. But at the moment, I'm really enjoying them. I think I'll do another set of guys and show you them before I kind of finish off this video and make a full conclusion. These are a few Romans I'm just doing. That magenta's come up beautifully. That's, what is it? Well, yeah, it's just called magenta. And I've done the usual sort of zenithal priming on this guy, so fairly diluted over that. Gives you quite a nice range of different shades of magenta on his cloth thingy that he's holding over his arm. Yep, there we go. So 95% positive at this point. I will come back in a minute with a bit more. So I thought I'd try a bit of skin tone mixing, the Caucasian skin tones with it on the wet palette. And you can see I've sort of started with the orange and then added white and come to a pretty decent sort of skin tone there. I did a slightly lighter one down here. And I'll just show you a few of the guys that I've commenced by painting the skin tones with these that I've mixed up. So maybe there's a little bit orangey on the basic skin tone, but then when I add a bit more white for the highlights, I think it's come up pretty well. Kind of need to do a wash over it to get a full impression. This big chubby boy, the big belly, by golly. He's looking pretty good, and again I think once he's washed with skin tone, I think it'll be great. I might decide whether to try to make my own wash again with these ones or just use one of the skin tone washes that I've already got. So a few of these Germans all painted with the homemade skin mixture. That one is the lighter skin mix that I made up here, so it doesn't look quite so orangey. The orangey one, I did add a tiny bit of magenta as well, just to make it a bit sort of warmer colour there. So yeah, it's not that difficult to make up the skin colours. I thought it might be a bit of a pain, and I was contemplating getting one of these expansion ones that has skin colours in them, but I think at the moment I'm pretty happy with what I've got, and I'm just going to keep experimenting with these. So I'm just conscious this video is going on a bit long. I might just wrap it up there for part one of this Kimera Pure Pigment Set colour review, and I'll come back not too far away once I've got a bit more experience and used all the colours, and sort of give you a rundown on my final thoughts on them. But so far very positive, definitely. I'll put up a few still photos as usual of what I've done so far. See ya.